Kensington Gardens, London. May 1963. A warm afternoon. People on benches. Pigeons on the gravel paths. The kind of soft English afternoon that makes the city look like something from a postcard. 4 men are sitting together near one of the park's quieter corners. 3 of them are professional criminals. The 4th is a postal worker from North London. The postal worker pulls out his glasses case and sets it on the grass. His name is written inside it. He doesn't realize one of the men has clocked it. He buys ice cream for the group. He talks. He explains how the overnight mail trains work, how much money they carry, which nights carry the most, how the high-value package carriage operates, how the staff are positioned, how a signal can be tampered with. He tells them to change the date, not the 7th, the 8th. The train on the 8th would carry more. It had been a Scottish bank holiday weekend. The notes would have piled up. He collects his share. He goes home. 3 months later, on the morning of August 8, 1963, 15 men stop a Royal Mail train in the dark Buckinghamshire countryside and load £2.6 million into waiting vehicles in under 29 minutes. It is the largest cash robbery in British history. 12 of those 15 men are eventually caught. They receive sentences totaling 307 years. The postal worker is never caught, never charged, never even officially identified. He dies in 1992 of a heart attack in the house where he lived quietly his entire life. His family had no idea. He left behind £3,000, the £150,000 he received as his share of the most famous robbery in British history. Gone. Where it went, to the church according to one account, has never been confirmed. His name was Patrick McKenna, and this is the story of how 15 men, 1 train, a glove, a monopoly board, and a postal worker's guilty conscience produced the crime that Britain has never stopped talking about. London, 1962. Bruce Reynolds was 30 years old, recently released from prison, and already one of the most accomplished thieves in England. That is not hyperbole. That is the considered assessment of Scotland Yard detectives who spent years studying him. Reynolds was not a brute. He was not the kind of criminal who hurt people for pleasure or robbed corner shops. He was an aesthete, a man who genuinely loved antiques, fine clothes, fast cars, and the particular intellectual pleasure of working out how to take something that belonged to someone else without them being able to stop it. He called himself Napoleon, not out of ego, exactly, more out of the understanding that the difference between a successful criminal and a jailed one was planning. Napoleon planned, Napoleon prepared, Napoleon thought 3 moves ahead. By 1962, Reynolds had assembled around him the best team of professional criminals in England. Gordon Goody, the hairdresser, 6'3", handsome in the way that made him look like he belonged somewhere expensive. A man who, under pressure, was exactly as cool as he looked. Reynolds trusted him completely. Charlie Wilson, the silent man. Born in Battersea, the gang's treasurer, the man who said almost nothing in his own trial and received 30 years without flinching in his face. Buster Edwards, the boxer turned nightclub owner. Loud where Wilson was quiet, charming where Goody was cool. The man who could walk into any room and make everyone in it feel like they already knew him. And Roy James, the racing driver. Genuinely talented, good enough to have competed professionally. His specific value to the team was not violence or planning, but the ability to drive any vehicle away from any situation at any speed required. This was the Southwest Gang, not their official name. That was what Scotland Yard called them. They had done significant work already. A £62,000 job at Heathrow Airport. Post office robberies, enough to live well, but not enough to stop. What Reynolds wanted, what he had been thinking about since his prison stretch, was the one job. The kind of job that made everything else irrelevant. The kind of job that let you stop. He just needed the information. London, early 1963. The information came through a solicitor's clerk called Brian Field. Field worked for a legitimate London law firm. He also quietly moved information between the criminal world and anyone willing to pay for it. He was not a violent man. He was a facilitator, a connector, the kind of person who exists in every system, the one who knows which doors are left unlocked. Field told Goody he had someone who needed to be heard. The man Field brought in had an Irish accent. He worked for the Royal Mail. He had detailed specific operational insider knowledge about the overnight mail trains running from Glasgow to London on the West Coast Main Line. Every night, the Up Special travelled from Glasgow Central to Euston. On board were dozens of postal workers sorting mail. In the second carriage behind the engine, the high-value package coach, were envelopes of used banknotes, money being returned to the Bank of England from Scottish and Northern branches after the weekend. Normally around £300,000. After a Scottish bank holiday weekend, considerably more. The man the gang knew only as the Ulsterman, because of his accent and because they never learned his real name, met with Goody and Edwards 4 times in early 1963. Kensington Gardens, Marble Arch, Finsbury Park, quiet outdoor locations where a conversation between men is invisible. He told them everything. How the signals worked, how the staff were distributed, which carriage to target, how the train could be stopped. And, crucially, he told them to change the date. Do not do it on the 7th, do it on the 8th. The 8th was after a bank holiday weekend in Scotland. The money would have accumulated. Instead of £300,000, the train would be carrying over £2.5 million. Then, he disappeared back into his ordinary life. He left behind one clue. A glasses case dropped in the grass at Kensington Gardens with his name written inside it. Gordon Goody saw the name. He did not say anything. He filed it away for 50 years. London and Buckinghamshire, spring and summer, 1963. The robbery Reynolds designed over the following months was the most elaborate criminal operation in British peacetime history. It required the intelligence from the Ulsterman on the money and timing a second specialist gang called the South Coast Raiders brought in for their expertise in signal manipulation, an electronics expert capable of rigging railway signals to display false colours, a retired train driver who could move the locomotive to the unloading point, a rural property large enough to hide 15 men, 3 vehicles and 120 mail bags for several days after the job, and an intelligence gathering operation that involved one gang member spending months befriending railway workers, getting rides in locomotive cabs, learning how the trains operated from the inside. Reynolds rented Leather Slade Farm, a rundown farmhouse in Oakley, Buckinghamshire, 27 miles from the target location, 6 weeks before the robbery. The assault team was assembled, 15 men plus the train driver who came via Ronnie Biggs. Biggs, the name history remembered above all others. The man who became the most famous of the train robbers despite having the smallest role. Biggs was not part of the Southwest Gang. He was not a planner or an operator of Reynolds' caliber. He was a petty criminal with a carpentry business that was going nowhere. Desperate for money, invited to Reynolds' house one evening and offered £40,000 for one night's work. His specific contribution, he knew a retired train driver who could move the locomotive from Sears Crossing to Bridigo Bridge, the point where the Land Rovers were waiting. That was it. That was Ronnie Biggs's entire function. Which makes the fact that he became the most famous person connected to the robbery, the one who ended up on chat shows, who spent 36 years in Brazil, whose name was on every newspaper front page, one of the most perfect ironies in British criminal history. The man who contributed least became the most famous. The man who contributed most, the Ulsterman, was never even officially known to exist until 2014. Bridigo Railway Bridge, Buckinghamshire. August 8, 1963. 3:03 a.m. The UP Special was running approximately 30 minutes late out of Glasgow. It carried 72 postal workers, sorting mail in 10 of its 12 carriages. In the second carriage, the HVP coach, were 4 workers and an extraordinary amount of cash. Used banknotes, bundles of £5 notes in batches of £2,500, £1 notes in batches of £500, 10 shilling notes in batches of £250, £2,631,684 in total. At Sears Crossing, the driver, 58-year-old Jack Mills from Crewe, saw a red signal ahead. Unexpected. There was no reason for a red signal at this location at this time. He stopped the train. His second man, 26-year-old David Whitby, climbed down from the cab to call the signalman from the line-side telephone. The cable had been cut. As Whitby turned back toward the train, a man grabbed him from behind. "If you shout, I will kill you." Within seconds, the gang had entered the locomotive cab from both sides. Jack Mills struggled. He was struck from behind with a kosh, a heavy blow to the back of the head that rendered him semi-conscious and would end his working life. Mills never fully recovered. He returned to light duties in 1966. He retired in 1967. He died in 1970. His family maintained for the rest of their lives that the assault contributed to his death. The gang, who had planned this as a robbery without serious violence, a gentleman's job in the language they used for it, never agreed on who struck the blow. Nobody was ever convicted specifically for the assault on Jack Mills. Now the gang had a problem. The retired train driver Biggs had brought, a man referred to in all subsequent accounts only as Stan Agate or simply Peter, climbed into the cab and froze. The locomotive was a New English electric Type 4 diesel, far more complex than the shunting engines Peter had driven in his career. He looked at the controls. He could not operate it. 15 men standing in the dark Buckinghamshire countryside, with £2.6 million 40 metres away, and their train driver could not drive the train. Ronnie Biggs had to shake the semi-conscious Jack Mills awake, under duress, a man who had just been struck with a kosh, bleeding, barely aware of what was happening. Mills drove the train half a mile down the track to Bridigo Bridge. There, the Land Rovers were waiting. What followed took 29 minutes. A human chain of 15 men, passing 120 mailbags hand to hand down the railway embankment and loading them into the vehicles below. 2.5 tons of banknotes. Before leaving, one gang member told the postal staff in the HVP carriage not to move or contact anyone for 30 minutes. Then they drove to Leatherslade Farm. Leatherslade Farm, August 8th to 12th, 1963. The farm was supposed to be their sanctuary for 2 weeks. Clean it, lie low, wait for the immediate heat to die down, then disperse. Instead, within 48 hours, the plan was disintegrating. RAF training aircraft flew low over the area on routine exercises. The gang, paranoid, convinced the planes were looking for them, panicked. The cash was divided, 17 equal shares of approximately £150,000 each, distributed into bags and holdalls, and the decision was made to leave the farm immediately, days ahead of schedule. Brian Field, the solicitor's clerk who had made the introduction to the Ulsterman who knew the farm's location, was supposed to return to the property after the gang left and burn it to the ground. He never came back. He was arrested on August 12, 1963, on unrelated matters. On August 13, 1963, a local farmhand noticed unusual activity around the property. He called the police. PC John Woolley arrived to investigate. Inside Leatherslade Farm, he found 17 empty mailbags, post office equipment, food abandoned mid-meal, sleeping bags in the upstairs rooms, and in the cellar, banknote wrappers. In the living room, a Monopoly board. The Monopoly board had fingerprints on it, the same fingerprints that were in Scotland Yard's files for half the men in the Southwest gang. The detail about the Monopoly board, the image of professional criminals playing Monopoly with real money while hunted by every detective in England, became the defining symbol of the robbery, the hubris of it, the absurdity of it. The gang that stole £2.6 million and celebrated by playing a board game about property acquisition and left their fingerprints on it. Arrests followed rapidly. Aylesbury Crown Court, April 16, 1964. The trial began on January 20th, 1964, before Justice Edmund Davies. He told the all-male jury to set aside any romanticized notion of what they had heard and seen in the press. Let us clear out of the way any romantic notions of daredevilry. This is nothing less than a sordid crime of violence inspired by vast greed. On March 25th, the jury returned guilty verdicts. On April 16th, Justice Davies sentenced 7 of the men to 30 years. 30 years. Longer than sentences handed to many murderers of the same era. When Bruce Reynolds was arrested in 1968 in Torquay, 5 years after the robbery, living under a false identity with his wife and son, he allegedly told his arresting officer that those 30-year sentences had a specific consequence for British crime. They had prompted criminals to carry guns, because if a robbery without weapons could get you 30 years, you might as well be armed. Let that land. The judge, trying to send a message about the severity of this kind of crime, may have accelerated the arming of British professional criminals. The irony is exact. 12 of the 15 men at the bridge were eventually convicted. 3 men, known in the court records only as Mr. 1, Mr. 2, and Mr. 3, were never identified. The retired train driver was never identified, and the Ulsterman was never identified, at least not officially. Various locations. 1964 onwards. The sentences were 30 years on paper. Most of them served far less. Ronnie Biggs, the man with the smallest role, escaped from Wandsworth Prison in July 1965, 15 months into his sentence. He had a rope ladder thrown over the wall. He fled to France, underwent plastic surgery in Paris, moved to Australia, then to Brazil. He spent 36 years as a fugitive. He became a celebrity. He gave interviews. He appeared on television. He returned to England in 2001 when his health failed. He died in 2013, aged 84. Charlie Wilson, the silent man, was broken out of Winson Green Prison by a 3-man crew only 4 months after sentencing. He fled to Canada, then to Mexico. He was recaptured in 1968 when his wife phoned her parents in England and gave away their location. He served another 10 years. He was released in 1978. He moved to Spain. He was shot dead beside his swimming pool in Marbella in April 1990. A hitman on a bicycle carried out the killing. The killer was never caught. Bruce Reynolds, Napoleon, the mastermind, fled to Mexico after the robbery with his wife Angela and their son. He moved to Canada, then to France. Eventually, he ran out of money and returned to England. He was arrested in Torquay in 1968. He was jailed for 25 years. He served 10 years. He was released in 1978. He was jailed again in the 1980s for dealing amphetamines. He published his autobiography in 1995. He died in his sleep on February 28, 2013. Buster Edwards, the boxer, the charmer, the man Phil Collins played in a 1988 film, fled to Mexico with his family. He came home. He served 9 years. He ran a flower stall outside Waterloo Station. For years, he was one of the most recognizable faces in London. The great train robber selling carnations and chrysanthemums at the station concourse, chatting to commuters and signing autographs. In November 1994, he was found hanging from a steel girder in a lock-up garage in Lambeth. The coroner recorded an open verdict. He was 63 years old. His funeral cortege was accompanied by 2 wreaths shaped like trains. Salford, then North London, then silence. From 1963 to 1992, Patrick McKenna lived quietly. He had been born in Belfast. He worked for the post office. He was 43 years old in the spring of 1963 when he sat in Kensington Gardens and explained to Gordon Goody and Buster Edwards how the overnight mail trains operated. He had his reasons. According to Gordon Goody, the only gang member who knew his name and who kept the secret for 50 years until breaking it in a documentary in 2014, McKenna was motivated not by greed but by grievance. The post office's failure to properly protect its night train staff. The workers who rode those trains with no real security. The system that cared about the money and not the people. He wanted the robbery to be a wake-up call. He received his £150,000 in 2 holdalls and a mailbag, loaded into the boot of a grey Austin 10 on the night after the robbery. The money disappeared. The documentary team that tracked down his family in 2014, following the clue of the name in the glasses case that Goody had carried in his memory for 50 years, found that McKenna had died 2 years earlier in 1992 of a heart attack. He died in a council house. He left £3,000. The documentary suggests the £150,000 went to the Catholic Church. His family were shocked, baffled. They had no idea. The man had carried it for 29 years. kept the secret so completely that the people who shared his home did not know. He was never arrested, never questioned, never charged. His name does not appear in the official court records. The police never found him. In the entire history of the Great Train Robbery, the books, the films, the documentaries, the trials, the escapes, the recaptures, the 30-year sentences, the Monopoly board, the flower stall at Waterloo, the man who made it all possible by sitting in a park on a warm afternoon and explaining how trains worked was never part of the official story. He was a postman from Salford with an accent and a glasses case. He got away with everything. The gang that stole the money didn't. Let that land.